just want to thank everyone for supporting my channel. I now have over 15,000 subscribers, but I noticed most of you that watch the channel are not subscribed. Close to 90% of people that watch the channel are not even subscribed. So please subscribe. By subscribing and making this channel more popular, I can provide you with better content. Soon I'm going to be providing you with some pretty good guests as well. So anyway, look, thanks for watching. Please subscribe if you can. Much appreciated. So you just enjoying the sun? Yeah? You guys work out of the Honda Centre? Yeah. Hello, welcome back to Tass TV Melbourne. The sun is out, the rain has stopped, and today it's part 6, buying commercial property. We're going to talk about warehouses and industrial factories. For those of you that have been following the series Buying Commercial Property for Beginners, you'll remember that in part 1, we spoke very briefly about the 2 different types of commercial property, specialised and non-specialised. With non-specialised, you'll remember we spoke about retail, factories and offices. In part 2, we talked about the Retail Leases Act, which is the statutory act that governs most of the commercial properties here in Melbourne. In part 3, we introduced the concept of retail securities, retail properties, and we talked very briefly about the difference between impulse retail and destination retail. In part 4, we expanded this into Grave Street. I gave you a really good example of impulse retail that I believe is the higher type of retail versus destination retail. We introduced the concept of ticket, average ticket and customer count, and the correlation between market value and pedestrian traffic through the impact it has on the rent. In part 5, we introduced the concept of passing rent, market rent and profit rent, and the term net lettable area, and why it's so important, because it's a common unit of comparison. And in this particular video, I want to introduce the asset industrial warehouses and factories, which is another type of non-specialised commercial. So we've talked about retail so far. Today we're going to talk about industrial factories, why they're important, why you should buy them, whether it be as an owner-occupier, as an investor, and what to look out for. So before I talk about factories and warehouses in Melbourne and whether they're a good investment or not, and how to determine whether you're buying a good investment, I want to talk a little bit about goodwill, about yield, and about vacancy rates. And if you remember back in the video at the Grave Street, you'll remember there was a burger shop behind me which was grilled, and that burger shop's been there for over 10 years, and people go to that shop, they know where it is, and it relies on pedestrian traffic, both impulse buying, it relies on existing customers and new customers as well. That particular location for grill develops over time goodwill. And what does that mean? It means that people will always remember that shop to be a burger chain, and there's some goodwill associated with that burger chain. I won't talk about the definition of goodwill and how to calculate it, other than to say that with retail, location is critical, and it's critical if a tenant moves from that location, they need to move to a location which is either equally as good or better. Okay, if they move to a location which has lower pedestrian traffic, lower exposure, chances are their revenue is going to fall. With factories, that's not really that critical. If you look at the factories behind me, if you look at that one there behind me on that side, that factory there is in a location that's not really that critical to the business. In other words, it doesn't rely on pedestrian traffic. It could easily move from that factory to another one in the area and it wouldn't affect the business at all. So traditionally, the vacancy rate for factories has always been larger for industrial properties and warehouses compared to retail properties. So if we go back into the 80s and 90s and early 2000s, typically the vacancy rate for these industrial factories has always been larger, and therefore the return on investment has always been higher, the yield's been higher. So for a factory that was worth $1 million, typically the rents you would expect traditionally would be somewhere in the order of $70,000 to $110,000. So anywhere between 7% and 11% would be a reasonable expected yield for investors who are investing in factories and warehouses in the 70s and 80s and 90s and in the early 2000s, until the internet came along, and that really changed things. So traditionally, people that invested in warehouses and factories, they expected a higher yield compared to retail because you also had high vacancy. And so what happened was, over a period of 10 or 20 years, even though the industrial factory gave you a higher initial yield, what would happen is, over a period of time, because of the vacancy factor, that yield would reduce. And if it compared, so what would happen is, over a 20-year period, if you looked at a retail property and industrial property, what would happen after 20 years? The return would be very, very similar because of the vacancy factor with industrial factories. Because of the expectation of vacancy, so there would be periods where the landlord would not be receiving any rent. If you looked at the total return over the 20 or 30 year period, what you would find is that eventually the yields would be very similar. And therefore, traditionally, people that were investing in factories, knowing that there would be a higher vacancy, what they would be wanting would be a higher return, and they were getting it in the marketplace. After the internet of the early 2000s, this changed a lot of things. A normal home business could move up the value chain by simply moving their home business to a factory or to a warehouse, and soon they can become a fledgling retail, wholesale business, both locally, interstate, or even internationally. So there was a big surge in home business conversions from home to industrial warehouses and factories. Similarly, a lot of businesses opened up, a lot of internet business startups occurred, and these businesses didn't in fact need to have a retail footprint, and all they needed to have was a warehouse or a factory that they could run a business from, and they could easily sell goods through the internet without the expense of opening up a retail footprint, and that happened as well. So after 2000, what we noticed was, after the introduction of the internet, what we noticed was that factories and warehouses no longer were just there to support the retail floor plate or the wholesale market. They became very, very popular for the transition of home businesses and also the expansion of logistics businesses here in Melbourne, okay? At the same time, we saw a reduction in the retail floor plate for shopping centres and neighbourhood retail precincts, and we also saw a huge reduction in the amount of vacancies in the marketplace for factories and warehouses. People that weren't buying were renting, and therefore over time what's happened is the yield has compressed from typically being anywhere between 7 and 11% to now being anywhere between 4 and 7.5%, depending on what you're buying. So overall, what you could say about the retail market, the industrial market versus the retail market, is that the industrial market, the industrial assets have become less risky, and the retail assets have become a little bit more risky over time. This is a huge phenomenon that's occurred over the last 20 or 30 years, and it's got a lot to do with both the demand for these type of properties and the risk profile that appears in the marketplace. I want to talk very briefly about zones and the difference between warehouses and factories. They're used interchangeably, but there is a difference. Now, with zoning here in Melbourne, typically all you need to know is there are generally, 3 types of zones: industrial 1, 2 and 3. There are other type of zones like mixed use and other things, but what the zones relate to typically are the intensity of the business. So in an industrial 1 zone, usually you can operate 24/7, the noise can be quite loud. Industrial 3 is usually a buffer zone, which is usually adjacent to a residential zone, properties, etc. So the zoning is really, really critical, especially for businesses that may want to operate 24/7. If you want to operate 24/7, you don't really want to be in an industrial 3 zone, in a buffer zone. You want to be in industrial 1 zone. So the quality of the zoning is critical when we look at value, but there are a number of things that are really, really important. Now, if you look at industrial factory, if we look at industrial factory versus an industrial warehouse, those names are used interchangeably. What's the difference? The basic difference is that with a factory, the expectation is that that business is going to have a lot more employees because they're manufacturing. There's going to be a lot more staff, etc. So what the expectation is for a factory is you're going to have more parking spots, right? For a warehouse, a logistics business doesn't have as many employees, and therefore you don't need as many car parking spaces. So when the owner is constructing a factory for investment purposes, the amount of car parking determines whether it's predominantly a factory or a warehouse. A factory will have a higher ratio of parking, a warehouse will have a lower ratio. So if you're operating a highly intensive business with lots of staff, typically you don't want to be buying a warehouse which doesn't have a lot of car parks, because you may not get the approval from council to operate. So it's important when you're looking at the different types of industrial property, you need to buy or rent something that is fit for purpose, whether it's industrial warehouse or industrial factory, and the main difference is the parking. Now, what's important also for factories is what we call ingress and outgress, so the ability of large semi-trailers or traffic to be able to come to and from the property. If you have a look at the one behind me too, if you have a look at that roller door, that's not what we call container height, meaning that the semi can't really back in because the roller door is not as high as what it should be. So that's an older style, what we call a workshop. So it's a factory, but it's a workshop. It's not really suitable as a logistics business because the semis can't really come in and out of the factory. So container height, having a roller door which is container height, is really, really important. Three-phase power is important, but typically for warehouses, the zoning is critical, ingress and outgress is critical, and the height of the factory is really, really critical. The one behind me there, on this side, it's a concrete factory. This one here is brick. Okay, so if we have a look at this particular property, there are two warehouses here, concrete panel with container height roller doors, so the semis could easily back in and they could unload all their goods, whereas this workshop, this Honda workshop, is an older style brick factory without container height roller doors, so it's not really suitable as a logistics factory, and there isn't a lot of car parking space either compared to the size of the site. So that's the modern style, that's the old style. If we have a look at this factory here, it's right next to a residential property, which means that it would be in a buffer zone, and being in a buffer zone means that whoever's occupying this property wouldn't be able to operate out of there on a 24/7 basis, and it can't be high intensity. So these here you would classify as warehouses. They're just for logistics purposes, they're for businesses with low intensity. So on the other side you've got a Vic Roads mechanic of some type, and here you've got a domestic builder. So they're low intensity businesses that are suitable for this. They don't require pedestrian traffic, they don't really need exposure, they just need somewhere to operate from. Similarly, this one here won't be suitable for logistics. It's obviously ideal as it is, could be used for manufacturing possibly. So this is a really good example of what we find in the inner suburbs, where we have sort of industrial areas that are mixed in with residential areas. The main thing to get out of this is that these types of properties over the last 30 years have become a lot more valuable, a lot less vacancy, and therefore the yields have compressed over a period of time, and they make for a pretty good investment, even though they're located in areas which don't have a wide appeal for a great number of tenants. They're still high in demand. When we're valuing industrial properties, the primary method of valuation is capitalisation of income. So like retail, we need to determine the net lettable area. We need to also determine the market rent and the cap rate for these properties. That's the primary method of valuation. The secondary method is direct comparison, rate per square metre of building area, and the tertiary method is summation, where we calculate the land value independently and the depreciated value of the building and add the two together. But the primary method is, of course, capitalisation. You've seen the difference though between industrial and retail. Retail relies predominantly on the location. If a business is to move, the location needs to be the same or similar in terms of pedestrian traffic and exposure. For industrial, it's not that important. You can see the properties behind me, what's important is the zoning. The zoning will determine the type of businesses that can operate from there. Here, for example, it's a buffer zone because it's surrounded by residential properties, so the intensity of the business will be low to medium, whereas for factories in an industrial 1 zone, they can operate 24/7 and they can be as loud as they like. So the zoning is quite critical. What's also critical is the location in terms of the roads, in terms of ingress and outgress of trucks. The roller door height is critical. It's more favourable having a container height roller door, which will allow that factory to become a logistics centre, whereas the property behind me is just a workshop. It's an older style brick warehouse, so it's limited in terms of the type of tenants that can operate from there. The power supply is important. It's important to have 3-phase power. The height of the building, we've discussed. The number of offices or the amount of office is also critical for some tenants and owners. The amount of parking will determine whether it's a warehouse or a factory. So these things are really, really important. But hopefully what you get out of this video is that over the last 30 years, industrial property has become less risky and it's become less volatile because of less vacancy in the marketplace. And there's less vacancy because the industry has changed since the advent of the internet. A lot more home businesses are moving into warehouses and factories, and logistics businesses have exploded. And a lot of the supply has been chewed up by significant demand in the marketplace. So over the last 30 years, what's happened is the risk for industrial property has reduced and the risk for retail property has increased at the same time, where the yields, there isn't a big difference between the yields between retail and industrial property, whereas 20, 30 years ago, there was quite a difference, anywhere between 2 and 4% difference in the yields. And that's primarily because the retail floor plate in Melbourne hasn't grown as quickly as the industrial floor plate. However, this could change in the future, and retail, in my opinion, is still a great investment, depending on where and what you buy. Similarly, industrial real estate is a great investment, but again, it's the type of asset that you're considering in the location. And some of the things that I've talked about today are some of the things that I think about when I'm buying industrial properties. So thanks very much for your time. Please subscribe. Thank you very much for watching this channel. We've hit 15,000 subscribers. Recently, I noticed that most people that watch the channel are not subscribers, so I find that quite amazing, that 90% of the people that watch the channel haven't even subscribed to the channel. So please do, to make this channel stronger, so I can bring you more valuable content, better guests, etc. But even if you haven't subscribed, thank you very much for watching, and hope to see you again very shortly.